Good morning. My name is Rebecca Katz-White. I'm the Israel Planning Director here at UJA Federation of New York, and we are delighted to be hosting this event and to be co-sponsoring it this morning along with the Interagency Task Force on Israeli-Arab Issues, with the New Israel Fund, and with the Union of Reform Judaism. I want to specifically acknowledge some of our lay leaders who are here in the room, and especially Harold Treiber, who is the chair of one of our Israel committees. I get to do the wonderful work I do because of an amazing group of lay leaders who are amazing thought partners and who really support an important vision and mission for our work in Israel. I feel especially privileged also to be part of work that has been going on for many, many years here at UJA, part of our belief in supporting and nurturing a cohesive and resilient Israeli society in which all residents have equal opportunities for economic participation and social integration. And you're going to get to hear from some speakers today who are really the people who are doing this work on the ground and who are really amazing leaders in shared society. We are going to hear from specifically 4 leading Israeli shared society organizations: the Abraham Initiatives, Ajik Nisped, Neve Shalom Wahat Asalam, and Mahapach Tahir. And you will hear different expertise and different approaches, different theories of change, but all involved in what is really exciting and important work. And as we all know from watching the news, these are challenging and exciting times where there are tremendous opportunities, but also tremendous challenges. And you're going to hear 2 specific panels that are addressing different aspects of what is going on now. They are going to be moderated and facilitated by Lior and by Liron and by Daniel Sokach. So you will get to hear different perspectives facilitated by our partners from the Interagency Task Force and from the New Israel Fund. Each of the panels is going to be 50 minutes long, and each will feature a co-director from one of the organizations that I have named. And specifically, these 2 panels, I think, illustrate both UJA's approach and also what I think a lot of funders and philanthropists think about in terms of how we do long-term shared society work. We have to both be able to be nimble and responding to what is taking place now. So the first panel is going to look at the unprecedented political developments of the last year, in which the issue of Jewish-Arab political partnership has emerged as a major issue, and Arab parties have risen to a new level of prominence. So looking at sort of what is changing, what is happening right now. But at the same time, we also, those of us who are involved in this work, have been doing
begin this conversation with the buses of the New Israel Fund. Thank you very much. Or at least the volunteer drivers when the buses were banned. So I'd like to begin this part of our morning with a conversation about that joint list. And I've given some of the background. We don't know what's going to happen now. The joint list, Ayman Odeh, once again, the leader of the 3rd largest party in the state of Israel with 13 mandates, 13 seats, is now in negotiation with blue and white leader Benny Gantz. In April, Mr. Gantz said he would not sit with Arab parties. Again, let's put that away for future conversation. This time, he's been far more circumspect about what he will do. So let's begin there. Thabit, what do you expect to happen from these conversations with blue and white and the joint list?
Well, just good things already, good things taking place on the ground. I just would like to say that the endorsement, the joint list.
Oh, sorry, I should have, Hillary asked me to tell you all, we have to speak into the microphones. And one other piece that I should have done, would you just say a quick word about who you are and the organization you represent for folks who are new to this?
Well, I'm Thabit Abu Raz, the co-executive director of the Abraham Initiative. The joint list endorsement of Benny Gantz as the next prime minister or to form the next government, and the call that came after from Benny Gantz to the Arab leaders, mainly to Ayman Odeh, is a shift in Israeli politics, something new. I believe it's a historic moment that we didn't witness, at least we didn't witness in the last 25 years since Rabin days. Well, I can say now that a historic moment that if the two parties can work together, it's going to be a shift, for a strategic shift in Israeli politics for the coming decade or two, since the politics in Israel is becoming more and more as bloc politics. The Haredi Jews, the Arabs, the Russians, and the left and right. So you probably see how Netanyahu is working with this block of 55 MKs. Well, I believe what's important with these calls, the endorsement and the return call from Gantz, the fact that Gantz did legitimize the Arab votes. Remember, Yitzhak Rabin, the late Yitzhak Rabin in 1995 was assassinated, not only because he's trying to move toward peace with the PLO and Arafat, he was assassinated also because he legitimized the Arab votes for the first time in the history of Israel. The Jews, the leader, Zionist leader, really rely on the Arab votes. So what Gantz did this time, actually, and this is the difference between what happened, as already mentioned here, between within 6 months, okay? Gantz, that he said, I'm not going to rely on the Arabs, okay? He played the game with Netanyahu. Netanyahu say, hey, you cannot rely on the Arab votes. And Gantz said, yes, I'm not going to rely on the Arab vote. So Arab citizens became as a soccer ball that two leaders are playing with this, kicking this ball to the other side. So, and I believe this is one of the reasons, okay, why the Arabs didn't turn their votes in 6 months ago. Now, what happened this time, and I will just come with that we met Gantz, not only Gantz, twice, okay? Something happened in this 6 months that Gantz understood that he cannot really win an election or form a government without cooperation with this bloc, the Arab bloc. And by legitimizing the Arab votes, we saw that the turnout went up. Now, some of my colleagues will say there are other reasons why the turnout went up in the last election, such as the hate speech by Netanyahu, the fact, the formation of the joint test, which is right. However, I think what we witnessed in the last election is a politics of hope that came from Zionist leaders, from Amir Peres of the Labour Party, from Benny Gantz, who said, mainly Benny Gantz, we witnessed his Arabic campaign when he said, I am counting you, I am counting on you, okay? And this is something new, never happened in the Israeli politics, that really relying on the Arab votes. Well, and the response from the Arabs just came. There is a lot, by the way, there's a lot of pressure from bottom up on the Arab leadership. Hey guys, we would like to increase the Arab MKs, Arab lawmakers. However, we would like to influence the decision-making process. And the Arab political parties listened this time that we should unite, and we should also come up with the results. We have to try to engage. So what we saw, yeah, that's it.
I'm going to interrupt. Well, no, it's not. It's the beginning.
The beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can just say that the Arabs moved from politics of a cry to politics of engagement. And this is something new that we didn't witness since Tawfiq Ziyad, since the 90s. And this is the new thing. Last sentence for this stage. Arab lawmakers have no illusion. They are not going to be part of an Israeli government, coalition, unity government, national unity government. They know that. Yet, coming to agreements, negotiation with Gantz means that it's the first step. I think Gantz can still committed to certain things that the Arabs really, there's certain challenges that faced by the Arab community, mainly violence and the crime, combating violence and crime, and other things.
Thanks, Tabat. So, and thank you, Interrupter-in-Chief. Feel free to interrupt me as well. So, Samach, I'd like you to introduce yourself, but then I'd like you to comment on something that Babak began to talk about, and that is, we saw on both sides of the sort of Israeli demographic spectrum, we saw Gantz going from saying, you know, I won't sit with Arabs to I'm counting on you, and we saw the Arab parties coming together, and then of course in a major landmark endorsing Gantz for prime minister. What do you think? This is a bit of an unfair question I'm going to ask you. You know, I was on a panel with Fida just a couple of days ago. From the hands of the Jews. You're right. It's a good point. So you're right. I'll continue that tradition just for a moment, and only on an intellectual level. You know, Fida and I were on a panel, and she really wonderfully, the moderator asked her a question about sort of the Jewish community, and she said, "Well, I can't tell you what the Jewish community ought to do." So it may be a little unfair, but I want to ask you to be our guide to Israel, because you know you are also an Israeli and have a great deep understanding. The two sides politically are reaching out to each other a little bit, but it's complicated. And there has been, as I sort of indicated earlier, for 72 years, right, it has been acceptable for Israeli politicians to say, Jewish politicians, I will not sit in coalition with Arab parties. And again, I wonder how we would feel if the head of a party here said something similar, right? So what do you think are the threats to what Gantz is trying to do and the things that are preventing him from going further in the Israeli public?
Okay.
And first come to you.
I'm Samah Salaimi, and I'm from Wahdat Salam Neve Shalom. I'm leading also, I was the founder of AWC, Arab Women in the Center. I'm so-called Palestinian feminist activist in Israel. So I'm sorry to be like the less optimistic person maybe in this panel, and let's see, we will compete, Fida. I won't compete with Fida in that thing. So let's put little, you know, framing and facts. The first joint list wasn't Ayman Odeh achievement, it was Lieberman achievement. And we were enforced, actually, the four Arab parties, to in order to survive politically in the election, to be together. And we saw also the performance, like what they did. It was very modest for 3.5 years. They have more crises inside the joint list than achievements. Okay, so it was very difficult labor for this to get to that point. And the second one, I think Ayman Odeh can take credit, so we'll give him the second credit for the joint list. And everybody, and I think the intellectual, the Facebook and Twitter activists enforce, actually the public enforce our leaders to go back again to the joint list. You're skipping April election when they separated again. That's a good hint that they don't really like each other and don't really want to be together. So the public take a lead, and the last election, I think if we are talking about this huge achievements of the joint list, I think the credit is supposed to go to the Arab population in Israel and the 500,000 voters who actually give the leaders a chance, or second chance, to fix what they did. The other thing that I want to refer here is Gantz is not trying even, you know, for the public. Okay, I don't know what's happened in closed doors and with chatting and you know in secret. Even if Ayman Odeh is not really good keeping secrets, which is, you know, something that he have to learn a little bit. But we are new with this thing. We were, you know, classically, you know, historically in the opposition, and I agree with Thabit that we were more crying, or the victimization, you know, process or approach it's changing. It's challenging now, and it's changing. So Gantz don't really try. He didn't move from saying I'm not going with the Arabs. He says, like, the last large statement was, we won't sit with non-Zionist parties. He means that we like the Arab. We can think or rethink about the Arab, but not about Balad. Okay, the three-knitted number of Balad. So yeah, and when we translate that statement, we know what he means. Like we became, as Palestinians inside Israel, we became experts after 70 years of the Israeli politics in order to survive, by the way, not because we like this arena. I do like the political game, the democracy game, and we know the forces that, now pressure Ayman Odeh to change things. So when they recommended for Gantz, Gantz to the president, to give him the mandate to form the coalition, they voted anti-Bibi Netanyahu. We don't know Gantz. Rabin is not Gantz, and Gantz is not Rabin. Rabin was already prime minister. He had 4 years of secret negotiation with Arafat, and he achieved a lot for the Israeli society, and he has some credit, and he was punished by the Jewish because he tried to change the discourse and change the atmosphere and to actually to do peace with the Palestinians. And he was punished because of that, and we all know what's happened after. And Gantz is really not in that position. It's not the same like when we talk about Tawfiq Zayyad and Ayman Odeh and Rabin, and I think this parallelization and this comparison is not fair for the four of them. So let's don't romanticize this process. Is really hard and painful, mainly for the Jewish public. So after 70 years of saying and legalization, the process we in Israel and the preparing the public to this Zionist Jewish, pure Zionist governments for 70 years. Now we are only want to, influence to push this Bibi, out. And this is the minimum thing that we ordered, and to cancel few, discrimination laws. The last one was the national state law, but we have 38 discrimination and discrimination laws that have to be canceled, that they were legalized in the last 20 years. So asking the Arabs and mainly the Jewish public to change their approach towards the Palestinian citizen in Israel in 7 months, between April and November, is, it's take us 72 years to willing to be part of this Israeli democracy. And now we're asking the Jewish people, and we're their supporters all around the world, to change everything written and in the Israeli laws and constitution and the independent statement, to change everything and to open a new and to have this happy end. It won't happen like this. We will pay a very painful price for this quick, I know that everything is fast now, and Twitter is the main, laws and regulations, and you now get, used to Trump rhythm of tweeting and changing things. It's not the way in Israel and in the Middle East, if you notice, So in 7 months, you can't change what's happened and what was built for 72 years. It's not fair. So we have to be less optimistic, much more slow, and much more wise of this process.
Thank you so much. Wise.
Of Hadash and part of the journalist. If you work hard, maybe I can dream and I can be the second woman MK in the Knesset. But I didn't do it for this because I think, first of all, community organizing, and it's a political action to make a change in the reality. But for your question, Daniel, I think the first one who should get thank you is Bibi Netanyahu. He do a very good work for us. I work in April in the election, and I work in September in the election. And the mistake that he didn't talk about Arab just in the one day of course, we talk about all the regime that more than 10 years that he attacked Arab all the time. But the last election, 2 weeks before the election, every day he have to say something about Arab participants. But the second thing is the joint list and Ayman. I put both of them together because people, when someone attacked people, they want to feel that they can be together. They will feel with more power. They can change something. I was really traveling all over the country, talking with women, with youth, with people. Maybe less I work in the South, but the difference was people was really angry in April about the joint list and what happened. People want to be together, and actually, I think I know what happened in 2013 when we decide that we want a joint list. And I agree with Samah. First of all, Lieberman pushed us to this. I know a lot of people that didn't agree on the joint list, but today they are the most big fans of the joint list, and I am including But no, it's important because you never know if it will work or not. So Bibi Netanyahu, I think, do a very good work. The journalist, Ayman Audi, not because I'm part of Hadash. We talk about young leader, bring hope to everybody, bring new discussion, challenging the Jewish part of the game. Yeah, of course. He challenged everybody. So I'm really, I think he's one of the leader that really affect all the left in Israel and not just the Arab population. This election, the last one, we have a coalition, 17th of September. I don't know if you hear about what it is. And it's worked in different way. It didn't do just campaign. It was door to door, talking with people, calling people. They was in the street everywhere. And they really, they call people, they talk. I know, I see them, and I'm actually, Mahbach Taghir is not part of this coalition, but for me, it's important to put this here because they work in different way. Campaign is really important. Making change in the policy is really important. But we need to do and work in different strategy to make a change in Israel. And the last thing that I think we need, and I'm agree, the most successful thing that we can do here, push Bibi Netanyahu outside and start at least talking about ending the occupation. This is the main issue that we should address here. This is the problem. This is the problem that have relation to education in Israel, to health in Israel, to good life in Israel, to shared society, to equality, to good democracy, ending the occupation. This is what we want to do in the journalist. And actually, I should talk as a Mahbach Taghir, but I'm go back to the. Yeah.
Okay.
So the last sentence that it's really important. Mahbach Taghir work as a grassroots organization. It's long term, and I know it's sometimes we don't see the effect and the difference directly. But first of all, we should bring awareness to people, and not just the people who want to be part of shared society. People in the periphery, and when I talk about periphery, I talk about Sfaradim, I talk about Arab and Jewish, I talk about immigrant. We should talk. Israel is not just Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Sorry. Even in Tel Aviv, South Tel Aviv is different than North Tel Aviv. We should give people to the challenge to try to make a change, first of all, in their community. It gives people a power. We should bring back people to work together as a community and not as an individual. This is something that affects our society, as an Arab society. We are, 10 years back from we now are in the very individual life. and it's make us more less power. So, and when people make a change in their neighborhood and bring light, they go to the municipality and ask for something, it gives them the power and the reality that they can make a change. And then it is active citizenship. This is what we need. And then people will go and vote and help us to bring more people to vote. So community organizing is a long-term work. Sorry. Okay. So, but this is something that we should start to work about it from now for the next election.
Thank you, Fida. Khair, would you introduce yourself, say a little bit about Ajik, and then what I'd like you to address is the less pleasant part of what happened in the last election, although maybe it had a good result. Fida sort of mentioned it when she thanked Bibi Netanyahu. And I noticed, I mean, I'll be honest, it's something that I sometimes jokingly say about New Israel Fund's growth and rise over the last 10 years. You made the joke about Lieberman and the joint list coming about. So there is a truth here that in many ways we have all of us reacted and I think been strengthened by the attacks on us. That having been said, this is a really painful and difficult thing. And for, again, a 20% minority to be told, you don't belong here through legislation and through rhetoric is pretty painful. It seems to me that it had an impact on the election. Did you want to? Yeah.
I'm going to just, in very task force in task force fashion, I want to, because Fida already spoke a little bit about this, I want to ask Khair to do a juggling act and speak not just about the points that you're raising, Daniel, which is the impact of the negative campaigning, but the contradiction of the investments that the administration has made into Arab society over the last 10, 15 years, and how that is perceived and how discourse versus investments are seen in Arab society.
Right, and we'll hit this in the second session, but part of what Liron is referring to, of course, are things like Government Regulation 922, which is an Equality and Budgeting Act, which actually obligates the state to give 22% of the state budget to the Arab sector.
Oh boy.
You don't have to, you can do 922 in a little bit later.
I changed items like 10 times in the last couple of minutes. So I'll try not to be more confused. Yeah. Khair Al-Baz, and I'm the chairman of Ajik Nisbet. And Ajik Nisbet is an NGO focusing mainly in shared living, shared society. And we are a national organization. The last, I would say, 10 years or so, even more, were very confusing for the Arab society in Israel. On the one hand, the right-wing government led by Netanyahu is investing a lot of money, a lot more than used to be on the Arab society. 922, just one example. But on the other hand, we see that a lot of negative behaviors are occurring at the same time that these investments are being made. Just to give some examples, the national state bill that occurred in the last, I think, 2-3 years, we see a lot of violence and increasing violence in the Arab society. More than 76, 78, 79 people were killed in violent activities during this year.
Within Arab society.
Within the Arab society. 78. We see that aside to these large investments, a lot of racism or racist remarks that we see in the news very often, excluding the Arab population from all the political system in Israel, or trying at least. So this is a very sort of confusing kind of thing that's happening in the last, since 2014, I think. The joint Arab party was formed, I think, 2014. And instead of getting people together, and Samah mentioned that, putting people together to face these negative behaviors that are occurring or negative things that are occurring in the Arab society, the joint party was not able to provide. And I think the results were in the first election, the first recent election, that people on the Arab society lost trust towards the joint Jewish Arab left-wing parties. And therefore, we started hearing a lot of voices saying, we don't need these elections. We don't need to be part of this political system, because the left-wing parties that when they were on power, they did not deliver. And now the right-wing parties are investing a lot more money. But on the other hand, that's the civil rights. On the political rights, or the national rights, the right-wing parties are becoming more extreme. So they lost trust on the left-wing parties, and they lost trust on the right-wing parties, and more voices saying, let's get out of this game. The results were the first recent elections, that very minimum number of people voted. But what happened then is that people realized that a few things happened. One is that they will remain without any representatives in the parliament during the worst times. I will give the Negev as an example. In the last 4 years or so, all the politicians from the government that were in charge of the well-being of the Bedouins were very right-wing politicians. Ariel is just one name to mention, and he's in charge of the Bedouin well-being. I think they call it the Authority for the Advancement and Development of the Bedouin Community, which is a funny name. If that's the same organization as actually in charge of destroying illegal, unrecognized towns. The pace that house demolition actually went through in the last, I would say, several years, the last 2 or 3 years, increased tremendously. And so the right-wing leaders are in charge of the well-being of the minorities, and that's something that people felt if they don't have representatives on the Knesset, that in the worst times, that will have a very high price to pay. So the first elections, the Bedouin members were not there. The previous elections, there were 3, but weren't able to do much, except one, Saeed, was very active. So people got organized to make sure that at least we will have one representative going in. And that was one of the reasons that the numbers went up tremendously. So with all due respect, it's not that's not just the transportation that increased the votes. I think it's more the motivation to at least get one parliament member into the system. Same thing happened within the civil society organizations. So yes, we saw the attack on the Israel Fund and many other so-called left-wing NGOs. On the other hand, NGOs like Regavim and all the right-wing civil society organizations started becoming very powerful. And people started feeling more and more that these organizations, if they are not being dealt with, or at least civil society organization from within started evolving and becoming more strong, that will also become very, very high risk. So you see that in both on the government level and on the civil society level, things started going to the right, and that created a real fear among the local population. And that's another reason for, as far as I see, another reason for the increase of votes on the second recent elections. I would also say that for the first time, for many, many, many years, and even though parliament members, Arab parliament members, based on research that was done by the Knesset, are heavily involved in solving internal issues, but the notion on the Arab society in general, and of course the Bedouins are among the Arab society, the notion was that the parliament members, the Arab parliament members, are putting more effort into dealing with external issues. And for the first time, that Ayman Odeh and all other members started saying that to the Arab population, that we will be focusing more on the internal issues as an indication, as a message to the community, That was the first time on the second election, recent second elections, September. And that's for my view, that was one of the reasons that the Arab society got united to put a lot more effort into increasing the percentages. So let me just end by saying that we need to, for the future, we need to put the focus more on the right things to do, the right actions to do, and maybe less on transportation, because where I live, we did not see a lot of, I would say, transportation provided by external organizations. People started organizing because for them it was so important, especially people coming from the unorganized areas. People started volunteering their own time and their own cars to bring people to vote. So to put the effort need to be put on something maybe else instead of transportation, because that can be taken care of by the community itself.
I hear you loud and clear.
Sure. No.
You will have a chance to test it out in the third election,
Yes.
which will be coming along in just a few months.
In 2-3 months, I think.
Co-pilot, how much time do we have left? Okay, so I wanna move us along here. We used to think, I think all of us, right, in New Israel Fund, and certainly, you know, I ran a big city federation on the West Coast, and certainly at the task force. I think that we used to think in this country, those of us who cared so deeply about Israel, usually that we were sort of the partners to our Israeli relatives, right, Jewish or Arab, as they built their project, and that our job was to sort of support them and have their back and channel funding and moral support and political support. But over the last, and I should say not but, and over the last few years, I think it's become clear that that probably needs to be more of a two-way street. And that certainly in the climate in this country, as we approach another election, there are things we can learn from the experience that you all have had over the last few years as leaders in shared society when it comes to politics. And so I'm wondering, I know this is a big one, if each of you could just take a minute and give us the advice that you would have as we face a very similarly challenging political situation right here in our own country, about what you would advise us to look out for and try to do to build our own shared society here. We can begin with Abed and go right down the line.
Yeah. Well, in one word, I believe partnership. I believe that a great work has been done by the Shared Society Organization in Israel that should be continued in our part. I forgot to mention that the great work that we did with Accord. Accord is an organization led by Professor Eran Halperin with Sikui, and we worked together. We conducted 2 surveys. During the election, we wanted to check a few things, expected turnout, we wanted to check Arab-Jewish relations, and the issues of interest of the Arab voters. And it works. I think partnership should work, will work in any society, here and there. And well, I heard here some comments from my colleagues that thanks to Netanyahu, to Lieberman, very interesting. Yeah, we had an election in April. In April, we didn't see that the Arabs are coming in droves, despite the hatred speeches of Netanyahu. I believe what happened this time is the politics of hope. Go with the people, talk with them in politics of hope. I didn't see ever that 2 leaders like Amir Peretz or Benny Gantz are coming with big billboards in the entrance of Arab towns, say, hey guys, I have a strategic plan. I promise you a strategic plan to combat crime and violence in your society. This is something new. Talking, dialogue, and working together, partnership.
Thanks, David. Vida?
Actually, we want to learn from you. No, what I learned here about the Jewish minority in America is that you can be very in a very dialogue and different idea between of you, but still be a very organized and together and work, even if you will not agree about everything. Okay. I think I hear enough to see that we can learn from each other. Let's say it like this, yani. We can learn from each other. I agree with Thabit that partnership is the word and the strategy that can really empower the left, can be really empower human rights, can really empower democracy. So partnership, but for me, in this partnership, each part, and when I talk about each part, I don't talk just about Palestinian in Israel or Arab in Israel. I talk about different identity, even in the Jewish part in Israel, should have a place to express themselves. I will talk about it more or less, but partnership, we are not the same. We should be, we can be different, but build a partnership basic on human rights and that want to make a change, you know, and it's responsibility and partnership, you know.
Thanks, Vida. Fair.
Yeah, Samah just asked me if Gans had large, whatever they call them, photos during the elections in the Arab society. I said yes. And if that happened, and Gans used to be the Ramatkal, what's Ramatkal in English? Yeah. And still, people are willing to accept that. So, first of all, if people have the sense of real influence on the system, that will enhance their ability to feel partners. And I think that's for the first time for many, many years now in Israel, that the Arab party, joint party, is feeling that they are real party that can influence. I mean, they're the third party in size in Israel right now. And they have the sense, we have the sense that we can change realities by having this power. So first of all, if we would like to recommend something to you guys, let the minority have this real feeling of changing reality, real partnership. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, and I'm taking the Gans example, I think the message, if the message is positive, if the message is inclusive, and I mean really inclusive, I think that can change realities as well. That can make enemies work together. And Gans, on the eyes of the Arab population, is not the symbol of peace. He used to be Ramatkal, and now they're willing to sit around one table and work together. So the messages from the leaders can influence tremendously.
Thank you, Samar.
Oh my God, it's very difficult to be like the opposition.
So concise.
Yeah. So first of all, Amir Peres' photos in Al Fahim in the Arab society, it was to survive politically. He, you know, with this woman with hijab, and he don't really want to be in, you know, with this strategical plan. He want to survive to be in the Knesset, and this is his job, so it's okay. So let's take things like in the the right proportion. And first of all, we talk about here about shared society and, you know, how to prepare the Israeli society, the Palestinians and the Jewish to the next step, to the future. And I'm really optimistic person. Like, I don't know what's happened here, but you know, maybe it's overdose. So please, you know, I spend, no, I'm not tired. I spend too much time with Zionist Jewish people, democratic, you know, people in J Street, everywhere. We faced the BDS attack. So please, you know, you know, it's overdose Zionism this morning for Palestinian activists. So, you know, the thing that should lead us forward is shared struggles, not shared society. We talked about coexistence for many years, and we coexist, you know, live together, disagree. There's the gap or the ignorance and the disconnection between the two communities was the thing. And so we needed more. We pushed for shared society project. I think the urgency in your country, in our region as well, have to push us to share struggles in order to survive together. I think that it's too dangerous to count or to put the whole responsibility of saving Israel from her fascist right-wing movement, political government on the shoulders of the
20% of the Palestinian citizens, it's dangerous. We know that if something happened now in Gaza or Netanyahu want to survive politically, he can invade Syria and do awful things in order to survive. Gantz will run to his arms and to open the doors for this big United Nation government that will leave us out of the game. And then the Israeli public will blame, not surprising, the Arabs for not doing enough. I think recommending Gantz was a good step, and it's modest and good. And I'm with that. I think to put the whole responsibility of the Israeli future, the future of the Israeli democracy on the shoulders of the Palestinians, it's too much. I think is that the civil society and citizenship struggle for equal rights, economic rights, and other, the empowerment and, fighting the violence, and it's very, very important, but cannot be disengaged to the main issue of the occupation, of the apartheid, of the separation wall. That should be the main struggle for every man or woman who believe in shared place, shared society, and peace and equality. So I think that it's what we did step by step. It was very, very important. Our next challenge is to find feminist Palestinian activists who advocate for Hadridi women and Ethiopian women in the Israeli society. This is how we should aim to that place. We should aim, when we are struggling with the illegal weapon industry, to collaborate with the Ethiopian community who's also suffering from the violence from the police. This is, we have to, in order to end in the middle, we have to aim higher. And what I'm seeing now as activists, as civil society leaders, we don't aim higher. We want to survive. And this is one of the major problems in the left in Israel. So maybe it's not the next election, but the election afterward, I really want to see not to join Arab left, join Arab Jewish left list, and to be there, to fight for democracy and equality for all. This is, I really want to see this political party who says, like, we need 3 or 4 Arab ministers in the Israeli government. This is the aim, not to push this fascist crazy man outside. And to imagine ourselves in the government. It's a process, it's painful for all, and it might cost us a lot of money and energy, but if we really want to sell this hope, it have to be real hope that we can influence, not influence one bill about 19.2, the economic development, which is important, but it's not enough. So if we want to lead, we have to aim higher.
Thank you all so much. These are incredibly important voices for us to hear. They are not voices that we in the American Jewish community hear regularly. And I think it's just so, we appreciate your candor and your honesty. And I love this image from shared society to shared struggle. And that is a lesson that we have to take here. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, 3-minute break. I will give you the credit. I think you're running for office too, with Fida. So let's take a 3-minute break, and then we'll reconvene and we'll go deeper into some of the issues in shared society. Thank you, everyone. I hear what
Hello, how are you? Wow, I should have. Oh, God. Got knocked out. today, you know, I kind of got email. So I know, yeah. Crazy. Yeah. I wanted to get up and stand. Exactly. What a good year. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay. Excuse me, everybody.
Sorry. We'll continue after this.
אני יכולה לאכול?
I'm on an ממש
וואי,
כן, מחר 5:30 ל-7. אני פנוי. אם תרצה.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to keep things moving. Please have a seat. Thank you.
Good morning.
So, I am I'm so pleased to get us back started. The second panel of this really interesting day gives us an opportunity to go wider. The fluctuations, the big changes that have happened on the political front this year are potentially really, really impactful, but politics by nature is volatile and unpredictable. And we're so trained to think about politics as in camps, with all, even though the speakers all emphasized participation and partnership as some of the most hopeful aspects, politics is often spoken in a discourse of us versus them. And I think that one of the things that we've heard about is that not knowing what's going to happen and reaching for this partnership builds on the long-term difficult work of creating foundations for a more shared society that every one of these organizations has been engaged in, and every one of these leaders has dedicated their lives and careers to. So this panel aims to widen the lens and talk about, rather than how are we looking at ourselves as actors in the political field, how, perhaps the segue is, how is this political situation fit, and how does it inform the shared society work that I think a lot of organizations are interested in understanding, and in the dynamics that have happened over decades, not just the past Italian-style electoral year.
The food is really good in Israel now too.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can talk about who makes better hummus. So while developments on shared society don't necessarily make headlines in quite the same way, it's been an extraordinary couple of years. And in terms of efforts to close the many, many gaps, normally in most events, I would spend a couple minutes explaining doing a 101 on what these gaps are. I think I'm going to just blanket the topic and say that on just about every socioeconomic parameter, the gaps between Arab and Jewish citizens are very wide, whether it's income, whether it's representation in employment, whether it's representation in decision-making circles. Most Arab and Jews in Israel still live in predominantly separate realities with little access to the same mainstreams of Israeli society. And this is fundamentally a fundamental aspect of what it means to create a shared society. Another development from this, especially the latter half of this year, that is, I think, a good case study is, and more than that, is the protests around crime and violence. And I want to start there because it's a very, very hot issue, and I think deserves understanding, deserves a little bit of time on this shared society panel. It's also seen sometimes as a political issue, but I think it's really important to understand it as a shared, and it's also seen as an internal Arab issue, but it's an opportunity to look at it as a shared society issue. So in the interest of giving some definition to what shared society work is and giving insight into these really important developments, Amnon, would you please start on giving us an overview of what's happening on the crime and violence protests and its role as a civic issue, a political issue, and shared society issue in a couple minutes.
And first introduce yourself and where you're from.
Sure, thank you very much, and it's great to be here this morning. I'm with the Abraham Initiatives for 15 years, and monitoring, working in to promote equitable and efficient policing services and enforcement, law and order in the Arab towns for 15 years since I joined the Abraham Initiatives, and basically the organization has been dealing with this subject since the October events of the year 2000. So it's 19 years, really. Let me start by saying, what are we seeing today? So today, we are witnessing a tragedy, epidemic of violence and crime in the Arab community, in the Arab towns. And when I talk violence, I am relating to different manifestations, almost violence of any kind that you can imagine, from bullying and vandalism on the ground to organized crime, domestic violence, etc., etc. Reckless driving, car accidents, any form of violence and criminal activity that we measure, when we measure it, we see a severe overrepresentation of the Arab minority in this type of violence. And just to give you an illustration, 60% of all murder cases in Israel are 60% are happening within the Arab community, which constitute only 20% of the population. So you see how, and this is only in terms of murder cases. The root causes for what we are seeing today, this tragedies, this catastrophe, goes beyond the absence of law enforcement and policing services, equitable policing services. It is true that since the October events, the police has been neglecting, totally neglecting, exercising severe under-policing inside of the Arab community. The Arab community stopped to be, the police simply stopped policing in the Arab community. At the time, it worked for the interest, it served the interest of the Arab community, who said to the police, the leader said, stay out of our localities. We know that every encounter between a police officer and an Arab citizen ends up with a killed or severely wounded Arab citizen. So stay out, we don't want you. We will take care of ourselves. We will maintain law and order ourselves. And it also served the police, who was very reluctant to get into trouble again. We remember under what attack the police was after the October events. You know, people, infrastructures and sports and recreation facilities, and huge widespread poverty, lack of job opportunities. However you look at it, you know, this very wide and neglect that touches every aspect of our lives, which was expressed and exercised by the Israeli government. This is, I would say, over 80 or 90% of the reasons, if you need to quantify or measure what are the root causes, they must be attributed to this neglect. So those are the root causes. But the flip side is that this is also a huge, you know, it may sound cynical, but it's a huge opportunity as well. Because if those are the root causes for what we're seeing today, the way to change reality is not only to offer better and equitable and fair and effective policing services, and not only to change and amend a law that refers to legal weapons, etc. It's all very important, and we're working on it. I don't want to elaborate now, but the Abraham Initiative is working very extensively. A third of our staff is dedicated exactly to this issue. It's a huge deal for us. But the real story is to get the government to develop the Arab towns, again, in a very wide spectrum of issues, from education, infrastructure, land allocations, housing solutions, creation of functioning matnasim, sports facilities, recreation, whatever, you name it. And it doesn't exist in the Arab community. And this is the right time to do it. So, and this is why when we started to advocate 2 years ago for the creation of an interministerial task force to address the issue of this phenomenon of violence and crime, we said to the government and to the prime minister, it's not only about internal security, it's not only the police, but all of the relevant ministries need to sit around the table. And yesterday, the prime minister announced that he instructed to form this task force. We're very satisfied, we're very happy, but it's only the beginning. Let me say, I'm just conscious about the time, let me say just one very important thing about the police. We need to understand the root problem, the root cause for this under-policing on one hand in the Arab towns and over-policing when the Arabs are perceived as a threat to the Jewish majority. Over-policing meaning banging on the heads of people and shooting people and trigger-happy fingers, etc., etc. This is over-policing and stop and search everywhere and profile, ethnic profiling. The reason is the double role of the police vis-a-vis the Arab citizens. The police was assigned the role of a security service with or for the Arab community back in the mid-'80s when the first Intifada broke out. And the nightmare scenario of the Israeli security agencies was that the Intifada will infiltrate into Israel. And the Shin Bet was occupied with South Lebanon and with the West Bank. And so the government said to the police, it's your duty, internal security, it's your duty. And the police started to function as a security force when it comes to the Arab citizens, which is not the case when it comes to people like me, okay? When I'm stopped by a policeman, I know that at the end of the day, this person is working for me, for my safety. And it's not the case with the Arab citizens. And until the mid-'80s, the percentage of Arab officers and Arab policemen in the Israeli police was higher than today, okay? And they left. When the police changed, they left. Now, very gradually, but nevertheless it's happening, there is a positive process where the police, after denying this issue of being a security force, etc., we had huge arguments, very heated debates, and a very, very complex relations with the police over the last 15 years. But now there is no argument. People understand, and they understand the need to change. And they are recruiting more people, and we're telling them, more people from the Arab community, and we're telling them, this is not enough. It's not about numbers. It's about your culture. It's about your attitude. If you will work for the community, you will not have to work so hard. People will come. If it'll be something that works for the benefit of the community, people will come. Same with police stations.
So I have to play my role as interrupter in chief now. That's okay. There's a lot to say. So I'll
just say one thing about police station, because there is a heated debate, and we're telling the police, you are creating new police stations in our towns. We're all for it, given under the condition that the culture of policing within those new police stations, again, will be for the community and not controlling the community or getting people to work against the interest of their people, etc., etc. So it's a work in progress.
Thank you. So the issue of policing has been growing as an important concern over the last, since October 2000, but especially over the last decade. And there have been, alongside the socioeconomic investments that we hear from the government, there have also been efforts in the police to create a department that addresses policing in Arab society to recruit more Arab police officers. And there have been, in a sense, technical solutions directed towards this issue. One of the big differences, I think, and clearly not enough has worked. I think one of the big differences that we see today is the bottom-up protests, the outcry, the voice from within Arab society demanding change and demanding addressing the numerous barriers. Fida, as a community organizer, I'm wondering if you can shed some light into how you see the perspective of Arab society towards this issue, and why now we see so many protests and really people taking to the street.
Okay, actually I'm part of, I'm volunteering in a committee, the local committee that we established 7 months ago in Nazareth, because there was one man who go with his grandchild in the middle of the day in Nazareth, and he shoot but by accident, because they came, the crime family or organization came to talk with each other, and he died at 2 o'clock, middle of the day, Nazareth. So we start as a group who very active to end this. I think we now behave as more as a people in this demonstration. We have, I think it's have relation to the last election, the last election. I agree about the issue of power, but actually we, the Arab people in Israel, have more hope than the Jewish. We are more preparing to build a shared, actually with guns than guns, and it will not happen. Let's put it here on the table. Nothing will happen with guns. We will have election in March, or it will be a national government. Yeah, without Bibi, with a good deal, I don't know. So it gives us power, the hope, the change, the being together. So that's why each day we have demonstration in the villages. Young people and especially women are part of this activity. We see, I was in the demonstration in 6th row. I was one of the women who blocked the street, and I drive alone all the way to Jerusalem. I'm not the only woman who do this. So this is something who changed. So we are working, we can see all the work that we do as an organization, all the awareness, you can start to feel it. I just want to say something for the police. Yesterday night, me and Samah, we eating here dinner, and 2 police entered the restaurant. And suddenly we start to react. Okay. And suddenly we realize that we didn't afraid. We see it as a very regular thing, but because we are in New York. If it will happen in Nazareth, or if it will happen for us in Tel Aviv, I suddenly something here happened. They need me, they want me. So this is a small things, what we feel as a minority inside Israel in front of the police. I don't think that we need a national program from the government to stop the violence and the crime. I really want to say something about this, and I will say something about the, you can ask whatever you want, and I can answer whatever I want. It's happy. So, yeah. 2 election, 1 year, what? So, people want, first of all, to feel safe in their street, in their neighborhood, in their home. Someone can have a bullet when he's sitting in his home. You should understand there is more than 400,000 illegal weapons in the Arab community. 80% of them came from the army. Crime organizing, have good relation, and get it from the army. If the government want to stop this, she can stop this. And then build a national. 80% of the problem is the police and the policy and the government. We take responsibility about our society. We should work more about volunteering. We should work more about active citizenship. Our children should know more their identity as a Palestinian minority inside Israel and as a citizen of the country. But first of all, the police and the policy should do the work that they do, like exactly in Netanya or Tel Aviv or in Haifa. Even in Haifa, in Jewish neighborhood, they act in different way than in Arab neighborhood. And I just want to give you some example. In Al-Fahim, there is a police station in the city. People go and address, and they get they find a complaint from 500 complaint. Do you know how much they address? They know the one who killed? 6. So now nobody, the government say the Arab community don't work with us. No, we work. We want to have safe life. We want the police to go inside each village and each city and take the illegal weapon, the crime organization, to do the work that he do exactly in each Jewish community. And I will come back to the important things. I think the last, I would do it very Daniel. I thought that we are family. Okay.
That's why it's easy. That's why it's interrupted.
So, my Bachter here is believe, and I'm really part of this. The first step to make a change and community organizing, bring people to be, to להתחבר. I'm really sorry. You should understand, I'm a Palestinian who think in Hebrew and talk in English. Sorry, I grew up in Neve Shalom, Mahdi Salam. I'm not anymore there, but this is why it happened. So what the word? To connect people to the identity, their identity. Because it's the first step to bring people to be active when they are safe in their identity. So first of all, I think that the action should be sometime separate and not together, the action even. Sometime as a woman, we should start to talk about sexual abuse alone as a Palestinian and as a Ethiopian, as a Russian woman, and then we can work together. Me as a very privileged Palestinian woman, I'm really awareness to my status. I can really work very direct with the Jewish. I feel equal. I can bring my voice. I can discuss things and you know, be powerful to say exactly what I think. It's dangerous to bring people that are not equal to build together a shared society. It is dangerous, and it can and it will not work. Maybe the first 2 to 3 years, and then it not work. So this is the first step, and then people, when they are awareness, when they're active in their community, when they are community organizing, they can build a shared society. Strong shared society will bring us to strong democracy. All this, should happen with بمقبل to the working about ending the occupation. Because nothing will change inside Israel if we don't have stop the situation like it is in Israel. Thank you.
So
I just should say something. I'm here not because we don't have Jewish co-director, but she's pregnant and she didn't come with me to USA. So sorry. We are the demographic threat.
So I'm a little torn. I think that the crime and violence issue is so important that I want to give Ariel and Lihi an opportunity to say a few words, either what's happening in the Negev. If you have what to add, I also want to ask Amnon what the mandate of this interministerial committee is and what its prospects for survival past the third election is, and hopefully very quickly so we can really go into the other shared society issues.
So very quickly, hi, good morning. My name is Ariel. I'm co-executive director of Ajik Nispe. Sabah al khair, boker tov. I'm very happy to be here. Just some thoughts about violence. A few years back, I was traveling in Guatemala with a good friend from Guatemala, and we were stopped by the police, and I saw him shaking. And I said, "Why are you shaking?" And he said, "In your country, when you're stopped by a police, you feel safe. In my country, when I'm stopped by police, I'm starting to be afraid." And this is exactly the reality that Fida was describing now. I don't know how many of you worked with people that were killed, murdered because of violence. In our organization, our head chef in one of our social businesses was killed 5 years ago. The morning you come to work, you meet him. Few hours later, his car is sprayed with bullets and he's killed. This is the reality that we are facing, and it's very, very difficult. And if I would like to connect it to issues of shared society, for many years we talked about the encounter approach. We put kids together, they cook together, they bring their hummus, you bring your gefilte fish, we wash dishes together, and everything will be okay. But it doesn't stick. And then we moved after 2001 to speak about the narrative approach. You have your own narrative, I have my own narrative. They will never meet, but we should find a way to work together. But they never meet. And now we are talking about shared society, looking for shared interests to work together, to build a shared society. And definitely violence affects all parts of the society, Jews and Arabs alike. And this is a place where Jews and Arabs, as Samach said, should go into solidarity, should work together around the joint interest.
You win the gold medal at both panels.
So I get 2 more minutes.
Absolutely.
Good morning. My name is Lihi Levian Jaffi. I live in Wachat El Salam, Neve Shalom. I'm the youth coordinator for the village. We call it the Nadi, which is club in Arabic. I'm going to talk about a bit later about youth. I do want to say that I started my youth work as a scholar. I received a scholarship from Pachtarir. And just now we realized that we have some sort of connection. My cousin is married to Daniel's cousin. So talk about the need to expand the people involved in peace and education and maybe even have more babies. So I do want to add something to what Amnon was talking about, that one of the core issues that I sense, I've been active in the anti-occupation movement and the feminist movement for quite a few years. And I think one of the most core issues that really should be on the table is the fact that we grow in a racist society. The Jewish educational system is very, it educates us to be very isolated from the Palestinian society. We're educated that we are different. We're educated that we are the given nation, that the chosen nation. And I connect it to feminism also. Like for me, it's very natural to listen to all the things that are said and to see feminism, and how that should be also very much connected and part of the discussion. But it is really important to add that the officers, the policemen that enter a Palestinian city, a Palestinian village, whether it's in the West Bank, and of course if it's inside Israel, then they went through a very racist educational system. They haven't had, maybe they had hummus with a Palestinian, maybe they were friends, maybe they were their parents' friends, but they haven't had really into having a conversation, thinking about the future, thinking about the past, having a thought about shared ideology or shared values. And that's something that is so core and so important. And that's the beginning of the educational system. And that's actually what should be really taken into consideration.
Thank you. So we started now talking about the different strategies and approaches to the really large field of shared society. And I'm going to bring it back to you to talk about this top-down through the interministerial committee. And then I want to open it up to ask the panelists about priority areas and why each of your organizations works in a particular approach to shared society.
Thank you. So
Don't take you their minute.
I'll try not to. So you
Both of us.
It's called a cartel, you know. But so 3 roles for us right now vis-a-vis this new interministerial committee. First of all, to make sure that it will continue, and it's very interesting. I'm positive that it will continue.
The question is the mandate of the interministerial.
Yeah, well, the mandate right now, as Netanyahu described it, and it was released on YouTube yesterday by Prime Minister's office, was to combat the phenomenon of violence and crime in the Arab towns. This is all what Netanyahu described. But again, the problem is that he convened around the table a small number of ministers and representatives of ministries, mainly dealing with justice, internal security, and the police. And again, I just said we need everyone to be around the table, and this is a role for us. And yesterday, when we commented, we made our comment. This is exactly what we said. We said you need to convene all relevant ministries around the table. And it doesn't matter if they have direct or indirect impact or role vis-a-vis this thing. So that's one thing. In regard to continuation, it's interesting. When we led our surveys with Sikui and the Accord Center before the elections, what we found out when we asked people, what do you need, the Arab community, and they said, the majority, the issue of crime and violence is the #1 priority. And when we approached Gantz and Peretz and Ayman Odeh and the others and presented the data to them, for them, we said, if you will address those problems, if you promise to address those problems and provide a sense of efficacy, you will automatically raise the turnout rate. And this is exactly what happened. All of them immediately took the subject, and why it was so easy for Gantz, for instance, because it's not a controversial issue. So again, you see the political opportunity around this tragedy, unfortunately, that if the Zionist politicians will connect and address the needs of the Arab community in this issue, it will resonate not only with the Arab citizens, but also with their Jewish voters as well. It's not a big problem.
That's
Okay,
probably some of the logic behind 922's success also, right?
yeah,
It's an
yeah.
intervention that's not controversial and helps everybody.
Yeah. So here you see again a sense of efficacy, which was the #1 barrier for not voting. Let's remember, only 7% of the Arab citizens do not vote as a principle, as a boycott of the Israeli system. The other 43% who did not vote back in April did it because they didn't have any sense of potential, of efficacy. And once it was provided to them, they went to vote. The third role in regard to the interministerial committee for us is to make sure that it includes the Arab community, representative of the Arab leadership and the Arab community, because it's insane to think that it's the government of Israel and the majority who can sit there, usually Jews, Ashkenazi men, ex-generals, sit and talk about the problems of the Arab community without including the Arabs around the table, not only in planning and talking about the issue, but also implementing it.
Thank you. So one of the themes consistent with shared society work is the need for making sure it's not just 3 representatives of 3 ministries, or making sure that there's Arab representatives. It's really a multi-sectoral, holistic approach, which is one of the most difficult things humans try to do, or often not try to do. It requires a lot of adaptation. Ariel, I want to ask you, because Ajik Nisbet, being the largest Jewish Arab civil society organization in the Negev, has long been promoting a regional approach, a multi-stakeholder regional approach to closing gaps, creating a basis for more shared society. Can you please speak about what are the priorities these days? What are you focusing on? How are you building these coalitions?
So let me take you for a minute to a very dark night about 20 years ago. In the Negev, I was a very young soldier, and I was sent to do some navigation drills in the Negev. On the one hand, I had a map. On the other hand, I had a compass, and I had to find my way, navigate my way through the Negev. At some point, I found myself in the middle of a village. Houses, some cars, goats, but there was nothing on the map. First, I thought that I've lost my way. But then I realized that I didn't. I was in one of the 45 unrecognized villages in the Negev. Now, I grew up in this area, maybe 20 minutes away from the biggest city of Rahat. We saw the Bedouin population when we were driving to the main city of Beersheba, but we never entered these villages. They were transparent. Somehow they were part of the scenery. First time that I ever entered these villages, this time in a daylight, was as an intern in Physician for Human Rights in my last year as a student at Ben-Gurion University. And the reality that I've seen there, what is happening in my front yard, really shocked me. And what happened to me is that I felt guilty and ashamed. But very soon I realized that guilt and shame are not a work plan. It only paralyzes you. You have nothing to do with guilt and shame. And I joined Ajik, and together with my friends in Ajik, we started to look at the efforts to educate for shared society in the Negev. That was 6-7 years ago. Surprisingly, there was not even one single program for education for shared society in the Negev, except of 2 schools, one from Rat, one from Ashkelon, that met once a year because the school principals knew each other. And we decided that we want to tackle this. But we had several values before we started to design the intervention. First, we are not going to replace the government. The government is accountable, the Ministry of Education is accountable for education for shared society. Secondly, this is not going to be a one-off. We want to look at a long-term process. And thirdly, we are not going to replace the teachers. The teacher should be the one who teaches the kids and not an external NGO that comes in and out, and after the money ends, the program ends. And we started to build this program bottom up, in partnership with the school principals, in partnership with the school inspectors, and starting with 4 schools, 6 schools. Today we are talking about 40 schools in the Negev that are participating in a 3 years program, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, 12 meetings every year. It starts with very simple things. They get blind maps of the region, and the Jewish kids needs to, locate the Arab villages on the map, and the Arabs need to locate the Jewish villages and towns on the map. They never succeed, I tell you. By the end of the 3 years, they need to choose a joint interest, for example, car accidents in their region, and work together on this joint effort. Ministry of Education was so impressed that now, first, most of the program is funded by the Ministry of Education, with some help from philanthropy, including the Social Venture Fund. But also, kids that participate in this program now get 1 credit in their matriculation exam. This is the only place in Israel that you join an Arab-Jewish program and you get credit in the matriculation exam. And this was the beginning of thinking of a larger regional approach. And for the past 2 years, together with the Beersheba municipality and other municipalities in the Negev, we were designing together the first K-12 education program for shared society based on the Irish model of shared education. And we are now moving from high school to middle schools and all the way down to kindergarten. So in the end of the day, young people, the next generation in the Negev, will not need to walk at dark in the middle of the night in the Negev to meet their neighbors. They will meet them as a natural thing during their life.
I would love to keep asking about the impact of this kind of work, and I'm going to pivot and pivot that question to Lihi, because Neve Shalom Wahat Salam has been doing leadership development for shared society for many years, and now you're working as the youth coordinator to develop these not just the encounters and the understanding, but the capacity for shared society thinking, discourse, wherever these leaders end up in Israeli society, whether it's civil society, private sector, or the government. And I know that you guys have some recent insights into the impact of this work, and that right now you have a vision for why it's so important. I would like you to please comment on that.
So I'm working with the youth in the village. We're talking about kids that some of them were born in the village. They were born into a situation that they live in a joint Jewish-Palestinian village. They speak from the minute they begin to speak, they speak in both languages. They're totally connected with each other on family basis, on neighborhood basis, but they do know their own identity, as Fida was explaining. And what we're working on now is we're working with a bit of the older ones, the teenagers, the middle school, the high school, and it's something that is coming from them. They want to be the bridge that connects the villages around them, the Palestinian villages and the Jewish villages, because we have an elementary school in the village that brings children from outside. It's 350 kids from K to 6th grade, and the majority are from outside, from villages and towns, and even Modi'in from around. But then when they finish 6th grade, then they go on to middle school and high school separately. So the kids, especially in the village, but of course also the kids from outside, again, they're separated to separated educational systems. And the kids from the village feel it so much. Also the other kids, because we speak with them also, but the kids from the village feel the contradiction so much. and they feel as if they left this world that they would wish was the real reality, not a bubble. It's what they feel should be their real reality. And then they interact with racism. They're attacked for being hippies, for being delusional, for having parents who have no connection to the reality. And for the first time, well, not really the first time, but maybe for the first time on them, they feel racism and they hear racism. And they came and they said, we want to create an opportunity to be able to connect these two groups, because they feel that they have the responsibility, the knowledge, the capability to hold with them, with these like 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, to tolerate the racism and to put it into a different track. I think that's like mind-blowing. And again, I've been working with youth for a lot of years, but to just be in this place where the kids themselves feel that they have the responsibility, and you know, the fact that they actually want to continue the legacy that their parents are starting is also something that has a lot of importance and should be here on the table, because it's not that they're running away and they're saying, yeah, we have these weird parents, we're going away, we're leaving to Berlin. No, they actually say that this is the correct way that we think everyone should live. Let's try and figure out how we can bring it outside. So not just expand the village, but also how we can help other cities and other communities connect to each other. So we're working now on this project on this to create a youth group, because all of the youth movements in Israel are totally separated. So you do have you have the Scouts and then you have the Arab Scouts, and maybe they'll bring them together into some sort of encounter. But they live separately, they have separate holidays and separate school systems, so they can only meet on very specific days. They speak different languages. The connection, again, will a lot of times be hummus-based maybe. And what we're trying to form with other organizations, organizations that have our beliefs, to form a real united youth movement that also wants to have fun, but also feels that they have the responsibility and the courage, and they're taking on themselves to be the real ambassadors of change of the Israeli society, of the Palestinian society, and working together. So that's super exciting. Follow us.
Fida, you're going to answer whatever you would like, but I want to. But I wanted. But I want to, you know, so much of the conversation that we've had here about shared society is back to the encounters, is back to how important it is for Jews and Arabs to work together in Israel. And this is, maybe it's very familiar to everyone who's spoken about coexistence for many years, and this idea, and maybe the idealistic idea of what Israel can be. But it's actually quite different after 10, 15 years of prioritizing socioeconomic development. It's actually, you know, for the last 10 or 15 years, so much of the discourse about shared society has been about closing gaps, about investments, about creating the capacities to improve the status of Arab towns. And I'm wondering if you can reflect about why right now the people-to-people work has come back to the surface. And Amnon, you're shaking your head, so I have a feeling you want to say something as well.
Okay. I think solidarity is really important, but what we should bring people to understand, and we here in this room, we should understand that we should have the same interests and not just solidarity. It's good for Jewish people that there will be equal rights in Israel for Palestinians. It's your interest that Israel will not start any new war. It's my interest that every woman that suffers will get help from anybody. So it's to build a strong shared society. I think it's solidarity is one of the basic on Mahbach Tahrir, but the same interest for both of us to make a change. It's better for it's the interest of democracy, the interest of people who believe in a human right, that everybody will feel and be part of equal life inside Israel. And and as a left, as a progressive in all over Israel, all over the world, not just in Israel. So we should address a problem in each community and deal with it. And I think what's happening, for your question, I didn't think about it actually. I am the only one that didn't get the question before, but it's okay. What's happening in the Arab country from actually in 2011, what's happening in Israel, the social movement, and what's happening with youth in Arab country. First of all, youth are more and more progressive and more left. In at least for sure in the Palestinian society inside Israel, and actually I think in all over the world, and we see what's happening now in Lebanon. So this is something that we should address and see it. This is one of the things that affect our movement. And Facebook and all this, as the one who cannot drive very good in Facebook and WhatsApp and all this, I see how things move very quickly. One idea, what's happened with us in December, the big demonstration against violence against women. I was in a group of all the feminist, imagine, all the feminist Arab Jewish women are in one group, 150 women in one Facebook, one WhatsApp group. So okay. I think they established the group at 1 o'clock at night. I wake up and at 6 o'clock, it was 200 messages that women. So, and I think that at noon, we decide the day that we will do the demonstration, who will talk, tak, 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 tak. So this is something that we change. So we should understand and bring people the opportunity to be part of action. This is the first step for building a shared society, for building a partnership. I just want to say something else. It's very important. We should تراكمية هاي أخشف زي بعربيت. Cumulating. Because there is a lot of people, a lot of students like Lehi came to our program. More than 2,000 students came to our program. A lot of women, part of a lot of empowerment program. Now in Mahbach Tahrir, we build an alumni community. And it's, I will say, it's because of the SVF, and thank you for the SVS for this, because this is something that we want to do. Things should continue. People should continue to find a place that they can sit and talk and build things and make a change. We work in a very different community, but we have the national level that we bring Arab and Jewish women from disadvantaged community. When I say disadvantaged community in Israel, it's women that will never be in any demonstration, but they can sit in the same room during a war, talking as a woman that they are against any war because of their children, and understand and think what's happening and choose to do action in a different way. Because not all of us have the privilege to be in the front together. And we should understand this. We should be very sensitive for people, how they choose to be active. Not all of us can be part of Neve Shalom. Not all of us can be part of effect. Thank you. The last thing that I want just to say, I know that sometimes it's really complicated to understand Mahbach Tahrir. We are a very holistic organization. And if you see things in a very holistic way, I believe at least, you can move in a very high level of partnership because you all the time sensitive for a lot of things. It's what Abraham Association do in changing a policy, very important. What other people will know that Neve Shalom is, there's people who choose to live there, is very important. So we, all of us are continue each other. I remember the first feminist group of facilitating against sexual abuse in the Negev. I do it في الخيمة, in the tent with a jig. So we should work more together, and we should understand, and I think we all understand. كل אחד ممشيخ الثاني. We all continue each other, and that's it.
So I think we're running short of time.
We are running short of time, and I really apologize that we didn't have time for Q&A during the panels. After we do have the room till 11, so I welcome anyone to stay for Q&A. I want to give Amnon the 90 seconds to add.
Just to say that going back to your question about the emphasis or the focus on development and narrowing gaps vis-a-vis shared society or education for shared society, I'll just say that I think that it's a matter of perception. I think that here maybe the focus and people were more tuned to hear about narrowing gaps and socioeconomic development, but on the ground, there isn't one realm in which there isn't more interaction and collaboration between Jews and Arabs. From schools, universities, hospitals, NGOs, workplaces, everywhere, more Jews and Arabs interact. And the result is also more xenophobia and more racism, because they're the flip side of each other. Okay, they're yeah.
On that note.
So yeah, on a slightly more positive note, although it's true, right? It's true. So what I just wanted to, I want to thank you guys all, and again, thank the UJA and task force for this really, I think, tremendous opportunity. My hope is that when we in the American Jewish community that loves and supports Israel think to ourselves, how do we operationalize that love and support? That today will encourage us to think a little bit differently and a little bit more broadly. And when we ask what we can do, right, to support the Israel that we care about, I really hope that this vision of a shared society, as we've heard from the 8 of you today, will inform for the rest of our lives how we think about that task. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. So we're going to open it up to Q&A, and whoever would like to step out, please do so quietly. Thank you very much. Khair. The what?
If it's possible to get people from all different groups in Israel. My question was, if you know the collab, and I understand that you, most of you are familiar with this. I was the member of the first collab, and if it's possible to get people from all the different groups, put them in one room for almost a year or so, and let them work together and listen to each other, I think it's possible to create this shared society anywhere else. Because see, I had the chance of sitting and many hours with people who are Haredi or women coming from different streams of politics and beliefs, and men that coming from different areas and beliefs, and we had to do some work together, and we were successful to do so. So, and I'll just end by just giving you an example. It was during Ramadan, I was fasting, and they went for lunch. And I ended up staying on the classroom there, babysitting for a baby with a Haredi mother. And she asked me to take care of her child. And then it occurred to me that I was sitting there, and a Bedouin Arab man babysitting a Haredi infant. First time in history. I think it's it will take some time till we get the same experience again. And there, I mean, she was having lunch and having fun, and I was sitting with her baby. So, what are the chances that this can occur somewhere else? So, yeah, it's possible. It's possible. So, sure, no problem. Sorry.
Yes, and questions for also the all 8 panelists.
I think one of the missing elements in this conversation is a conversation about the Druze community, who are perhaps the ultimate example of cooperation of a sub-community, well, sub is the wrong word, of a smaller community, a non-Jewish ethnic community with the Jewish community, going from every place from integration in the army, integration in the society, but not necessarily integration in the schools, which is something which is missing and needs to be changed. The Druze community has the highest percentage of high school graduates, higher than any other community in Israel. And the participation in the army, everyone recognizes and applauds and should be honored. And the Druze community should be included in these discussions, and they should be included as leaders in the shared society, because it is a community that recognizes its own ethnicity and recognizes its position as citizens of Israel, active citizens of Israel.
Can I address this? Everything I think that we said here includes and assumes that the Druze are included in the conversation. We don't make this differentiation between the different groups within the Arab society. But just to give you, well, just
the Druze community does not
Amnon?
consider itself an Arab society.
But so
And I think that should be recognized. They are a separate society.
We work in a, I just want to say that our work, we work in one Druze village, and all what I say about crime, poverty, problem of the, is all the problem that we suffer from as a Palestinian Arab community, the same village and all the Jewish community suffer from. So we have a coordinator from the Druze community working with us. She's part of our discussion. She's part of our work. So when we work, at least I think the all organization here, we talk about Druze as a part of the Arab community. And the joint list includes, yeah.
Well, I would like to add that I heard this before, and let's just put it as a fact. The Druze are Arabs. Their mother tongue is Arabic. They don't have a Druze language. They have different religion. That's true. So they're ethno-religious group, but not ethno-linguistic group. They are part of us. Okay, their culture is the same. By the way, they are overrepresented in the Knesset. They have 3 different Druze members, including one in the joint list. Okay, there is one in Lieberman's party, another one with Kahol Levan party, which is fine. But it's very important to know they are facing still, even after serving the Israeli army, they are facing the same problems. Okay, especially the issue of land and the planning and home demolition. We should know these things. And we are active there, and we really work with the Druze all the time.
No, I just wanted to ask a question. I wanted to go back to something that my boss, Daniel Sokach, said at the very end and ask you back on the political ticket. I heard people saying that this will never happen, the coalition that includes, this thing with Gantz is not really going to happen. And I myself, as somebody engaged in these issues, think that we really need to treat it as if it could, because many of us hope that it will and think it should at some point. And so we're in a room with a nice cross-section of American Jewish communal leaders. And I'm wondering how, for those of us who agree, and maybe not everybody does, how we can lend our voice here to support that idea now in these critical moments, that maybe it could happen one day, and that if we're talking about Arab-Jewish partnership, we're talking about on all levels of society, including on the political. I'm wondering how American Jewish voices could help in that effort from your perspective.
I think, Libby, and I say it when I talk, we, the Arab and the journalists, are more ready for this. So if we talk about, especially in this issue, all what we say until now to work just with the Arab. But this issue, we should talk more with the left, the Zionism left, and, sorry, you know what's the most famous language all over the world? Bad English. And I'm really talking very fluently. So really sorry about the English. But I think And this is what's happened different personally in my activism in the last year, 2 years, is that I understand and I'm more ready to talk with the Jewish, different kind of Jewish in the political spectrum, because I think that we should need to do a lot of work. They don't know about the Arab a lot. They don't know that and they should know more about the minority, about what we suffered from, and about that we are ready more for this partnership. So there is a lot of work in this side. I think we still need to work in the Arab society, but we are really more what Ayman say. And you talk about the one of the search that you do with Sikui. The Arab population are more ready for even part of the government. That I'm at least I'm not see that I can be part of government that still occupied my people. But there's people who can say that we should do it to make a real change. The other side are not ready. Even sometimes merits, when we talk about real partnership, something starts.
Okay, I would like just to add a few words about that. I would like to agree in principle with my colleague, with Fida. According to our surveys, the overwhelming majority of the Arab population is willing to go in this track of cooperation. Still, we have some problems that we have been alienated and marginalized and discriminated against in politics. So what we need is a politics of hope again. Politics, and to change the course. The course just start to be changed, okay? From politics of victimization, politics of cry, to politics of engagement. But for the tango, you need always two people, not one. The Arabs are willing to dance, they love to dance now. And I want to tell you that Arabs are really, in the last few years, they are knocking in the doors of the Israeli parliament, the Israeli government. But still, Arabs will come with conditions. They are not coming to dance for a tango for nothing. The issue of peace between our country and our people is very important for us. We'd like to see peace process. You remember when was the peace process, the last peace process? We've seen nothing during the Netanyahu's regime. But not only this, we need to take us seriously. We are 20% of the total population. We would like to play the game, but we need to find partners in the other side.
It's really pleasure always to speak after Thabit, you know. Like I got used
to disagree with me, right?
It's good, you know, I got used to that. But I think that for like Arab Israeli or Palestinian Israeli tango, you need three parties: the Palestinians, the Israelis, and the Americans. And you know, you ask about what you can do, right? And I think this was the question. You know, you can start asking questions. It's like we would do with what we did in the feminist movement, gender mainstreaming. Maybe we should start asking about, talking about Palestinian mainstreaming in the Israeli politics. So you meet people, you meet Knesset members, you meet policymakers, you meet political parties, you meet donors, you meet federation, you meet people who influence what's happened in the Israeli politics, and you start to ask about the social issue, what's happened about the minority, the Ethiopian, the Haredi, what's happened with the Russian minority. You are involved, so you know a lot. So if we start talking about Palestinian mainstreaming on the politics, in the Israeli politics, and challenge and ask questions, what's your agenda about the Palestinian minority? What you think about the national state law? What you do with Kamenetz? What we do with Kamenetz law? What do you think about the domination and destroying and evacuating 42 unrecognized Bedouin villages in the Negev? So to ask the hard question and to make their life hard with that questions, and I know that you can do this. At least you can do this, and you can condition any donations or any contributions of that issue. How do you target 1, 2, 3, and we can provide you a lot of information. Abraham Initiative, Secure, Neve Shalom, we have Ajit, we have the information. We can feed you, and we can feed you with the relevant information, and you will help us from your position. And this is what what you do, but you are very, very tender. We have to be a little bit, pushy and less elegant, to do it very, very hard. We are in urgent situation. It's not, 30 years we thought that knowledge and uprising and awareness about the Palestinian minority inside Israel was enough. It's not enough. We have to ask the hard question, and you can do that for us. And no, you are not talking after me.
I wanted to add something that I actually grew up in America for a few years as a child until the age of 8. And I know politics very much changed. That was the 80s or the 90s. But I do want to add that I think that the conversation, especially in America, even within the Jewish community and the ex-Israeli community in America, should be a bit broadened and should be about the humanistic values and about the correct civil world and countries that we want to live in, and what are the values that we want to connect to. And I think that is something that it can come from different ways, but I think that it's not, it's by chance that we're Palestinians and Jewish in this area. Like, erase that for a second and think about the fact that there are people who are discriminated because of who they were born in, what family or in what city, because maybe in Neve Shalom it'll be a bit different. But that's, I think the conversation should be a bit larger. So we do have specific connections, but actually what I believe is actually taking the conversation to I don't know if it's the higher or the lower level of saying that it's just a people issue and it's a lot of money and a lot of intentions to continue the ongoing occupation and the ongoing segregation of the communities is something that has to be more talked about. And I think the Jewish community can say it without feeling that it's like has nothing to do with Judaism or whatever. Because the fact is that so much money is just spent and so many lives are just thrown away for some specific interests. And actually the fact that the Palestinians are not recognized and this continuous dialogue of you recognize me before I recognize you, it's really children's play. And people are living like this and suffering like this and are dying and are not receiving the equal opportunities that they deserve. So actually, I would wish to think of how that can go to a bit of not just Jews, Palestinians, Arabs, Jews, Hebrew-speaking, Arabic-speaking, like taking it to a different place.
I've seen many interactions and meetings between American Jews, prominent American Jews and Israeli politicians, and I agree with Samah. They're not asking hard enough questions, are not willing to confront them. Usually people feel that it's their honor, or they appreciate the time that the Israeli politician is dedicated, and they're not playing hard enough with them. In addition to asking the tough questions, they need to communicate zero tolerance, no total rejection of the notion that decision-making processes and forums in Israel are reserved only for Jews. This is unacceptable, and it should be denounced and rejected in a very strong and clear way by,
Thank you. I will just say, the task force has a unique position of being an educator for the wide breadth of the American Jewish community. And so despite the urgency and the crisis moment, I want to put a reminder that, like the Arab community, like Israel, it's the Jewish community here is a multivocal community with various levels of knowledge and awareness about Israel, and it has its own struggles speaking about Israel right now, which threaten to divide the community and weaken it as well. I think that what we promote a lot of the time is how learning about these issues can strengthen the Jewish community, can strengthen Israel. And I think it's very dependent, time and place and person, who can be in the right moment, the right place to ask which question. And I want to just legitimize every level of the conversation as long as that conversation is moving forward. And on that note, thank you so much for taking us forward in the conversation here today. And thank you everyone for coming. You know what, there was going to be, and I forgot.